what I would like to do is introduce you to today's first speaker, who will also be your moderator for the rest of the day, and that is Dr. Adrian Lowe. And the title of Dr. Lowe's talk today will be a case study monitoring the effectiveness of aromatherapeutic breathing with heart rate variability biofeedback. Let me give you a little bit of background about Dr. Lowe. Dr. Adrian Lowe is a chartered psychologist, British Psychology Society, and a coaching psychologist, International Society of Coaching Psychology, and is graduated with a Doctor of Clinical and Industrial/Organizational Psychology. Dr. Lowe's workspace stress research has won the Presidential Award for Doctoral Research Excellence at the California Southern University, and has since then he has been invited to be a keynote speaker in many conferences worldwide. Dr. Lowe is the president of the Hong Kong Association of Psychology, a not-for-profit organization. Wow. We are looking forward to hearing Dr. Lowe's talk today. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Lowe. It is a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to hearing about aromatherapy breathing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lyndon Young, for the wonderful introduction. And I think we've met in previous conferences before. And
Yes.
I'm happy to see all of you guys again. Now,
Yes.
First of all, I'm not a cardiologist, all right? I know I'm in the midst of so many renowned cardiologists all over the world. So please forgive me if I say something wrong that is not medically correct. All right, so the topic I'm going to share with you today is a case study. And that is to monitor the effectiveness of aromatherapeutic breathing with heart rate variability biofeedback. So as an introduction, we have to understand that heart rate variability can be used as an objective measurement of mental health and workplace stress, because workplace stress is an emerging global problem. Moreover, workplace stress triggers employee reactions such as physical ailments, psychological effects, and unhealthy coping habits. And conjointly, organizational productivity drops as absenteeism, presenteeism, turnover, and sick leave increases. So this is actually a typical Hong Konger in Hong Kong, and the media has projected him as one of a typical stressful employee. So what is heart rate variability? Now, heart rate variability refers to the beat-to-beat alterations in heart rate calculated by quantifying the amount of RR intervals, and that is the duration between two consecutive R waves of the electrocardiogram, known as the ECG. And the changes are recorded as generated from the ECG data. So the RR interval can be influenced by physical and psychological variables such as hypertension medications, anti-hypertension medications, and antidepressants. So I'm not going to go too technical over here, but how heart rate variability is calculated can be seen in this visual. So for example, we look at how many heartbeats within a time frame, and what are the RR intervals being modulated, and that is known as the frequency domain. So basically, there are actually formulas to calculate the heart rate variability. So for example, we will use this formula over here, like RR interval 1 minus R interval 2, the square of that, and we keep adding on and so on and so forth, and then we'll take the square root of the mean of all the summations of the above, and that is known as the RMSSD. And RMSSD is just one of the components that can be denote the HRV. So there are actually what we call time domain measurements of HRV, known as the SDNN. So SDNN is the standard deviation of the normal, known as the NN sinus initiated interbeat interval, measured in milliseconds. To simply put, SDNN can be referred to as a marker of how the overall nervous system is functioning. For example, what's the patient's number that is compared to maybe when the patient is in good status? And what would be the concern, for example? So another time domain measurement of HRV would be the RMSSD, and that is the root mean square of successive differences between the normal heartbeats. So the RMSSD would reflect the beat-to-beat variance in heart rate and is the primary time domain measurement that is used to estimate the vaguely mediated changes reflected in HRV. So other measurements of HRV that is used in my case study research is the MHRR, which is also known as the mean heart rate range, and is derived from the mean difference between the maximum and minimum heart rate from 6 successive deep breaths. And there's also another measurement known as the normalized coherence. And normalized coherence is a measure of the pattern in the heart's rhythm, which is independent of the amount of heart rate variability and reflects an orderly and harmonious synchronization between various systems in the body, such as the heart, the respiratory system, and the blood pressure rhythms. And the amount of coherence we have in our heart rhythms can be measured with a monitoring device. So having said that, there are also other ways to measure HRV, and I'll be really brief in that, and it's known as the frequency domain. So we have things like the LF, the HF. So basically, we have so many ways to measure the HRV. Now we have to understand the importance of HRV in assessing the workplace stress, because we have to understand that there is a demand control model of workplace stress, which suggests that when the demands are high and when the control is low, there will be low social support, right? And that actually causes the stress within employees. And that causes an imbalance between the job demand and the person's ability to meet the demands. So where HRV is concerned, an increase of HRV would decrease the performance anxiety. So we can think of HRV as like the index of good health. So the higher it is, the better, right? So the higher the HRV, the lesser performance anxiety the employee would exhibit. And that would also increase the resilience. While on the other hand, a decreased HRV is associated with the inability to respond by physiological variability and complexity. And moreover, there are meta-analysis research that shows that low HRV is associated with 32 to 45% of increased risk of first cardiovascular diseases. So in my case study, which I'm presenting tonight or today, wherever you are at, we are using the emWave Pro Plus. So what is the emWave Pro Plus? It is actually designed by the Institute of HeartMath in the United States of America. So it collects pulse data by placing a pulse sensor, like this participant over here, and it is placed on the earlobe, or it can be placed at the fingertip, and data can be plugged into a computer, and it translates the data of heart rhythms and allows real-time assessment of how thoughts and emotions affect the participant's heart rhythms. It uses photoplethysmography technology, which is a reliable and valid method of capturing and quantifying real-time heart rate variability data. And we use this in the presenting case study. Now, research has shown that aromatherapy has proven to have significant positive results with heart rate variability, such as the effect of lavender aromatherapy on heart rate variability, and juniper essential oil, and so on and so forth. In this case study, which I'm presenting today, I'm going to introduce a aromatherapeutic breathing with this aromatherapy earth, which consists of these ingredients: rose, geranium, bergamot, neroli, petite grain, vetiver, and is known to calm the central nervous system. So in this case study, the participant will be using this aromatherapeutic breathing with earth, and we're going to measure it with the emWave Pro as introduced in the previous slide. So let's look at the participant. So this case is presented with a participant fictitious initials known as SE, and she is a 34-year-old Chinese professional woman. She is a manager in Hong Kong. She appeared to be overwhelmed with a workload, and she felt isolated with high anticipation from her family. She suffered neurocardiogenic syncope, also known as simple fainting, insomnia, easily feeling tired, frustrated, and anxious. And she agreed to participate and express interest in participating in the heart rate variability biofeedback and the aromatherapeutic breathing with earth. And we use ABwE as abbreviated in this presentation. So she participated with the hope of reducing the stress that she experienced with her family and at her workplace. So SE attended 4 sessions with me, the researcher, with an analysis of the emWave Pro Plus data and the ABwE. So in session 1, breathing and HRV data were collected as the baseline just by focusing on the breathing. So SE was tracked with about 11 breaths per minute, with 3 sudden intake of breath with a coherence score of 40, and that is known as the low coherence, 24, which is known as the moderate coherence, and 36, which is known as the high coherence. And we actually did a 1-minute HRV assessment, heart rate variability assessment, and SE's MHRR score was 17.2 beats per minute, and her SDNN was 89.5, RMSSD was 63.7, and her coherence score was 77.9. And in the same session, we told SE to record a stressful familial event, right? And she explained or she described seeing images of her father and images of being trapped, and with coherence score of low coherence 91, the moderate coherence of 0, and high coherence of 9. So basically, to simply put, the higher the score on the red slider over here, the more severe her situation was. And she exhibited uneven breathing pattern. So you can see these are uneven breathing pattern with high arousal patterns, like there's a sudden peak somewhere, right? And so all these were noticed, and they were discussed. And after that, in figure 5 over here, SE practiced ABwE, which is the aromatherapeutic breathing with the earth, with me as the researcher, and we noticed more consistent and sign-like waves. So we actually look at how sign-like are the breathing patterns. I mean the heart rate patterns of her breathing. And by doing that, her overall coherence after the ABwE was low coherence 12, moderate coherence 12, and a high coherence 76. So SE was invited to practice the ABwE as homework. So she gets to bring the ABwE back home, and she can practice the aromatherapeutic breathing with the earth when she was at home as her homework. So when she came back in session 2, we reviewed her assigned homework, and she described how ABwE was able to help her to recharge her energy and helped her to feel calmer, more relaxed, and she activated a generative feeling. And SE's HRV and the pattern generated more consistent and sign-like waves, and basically it's more coherent. So her average heart rate was lowered from 75 beats per minute to 61 beats per minute. And her overall coherence level was low coherence score of 4, middle coherence of 10, and a high coherence of 86. So again, the higher the score on the green side, the merrier. And we have the main peak over here towards the 0.1 in what we call a power spectrum, which suggests that the balance between her sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of her autonomic nervous system upon the utilization of the ABwE was more balanced. And SE was invited to practice the ABwE as her homework again for the second week. So that was session number 2. And when she came back in session number 3, that was like the third week. So there was each session will last for a week. So the third session, again, we reviewed her assigned homework of her practice of the ABwE. And at the same time, we explored another HeartMath tool known as the attitude breathing. And together with the ABwE, so we kind of combined two modalities together. And this protocol helped SE to replace feelings of draining, negative attitudes with healthier and positive ones by recognizing a feeling of attitude with a replacement attitude and focusing the attention in the chest area with lower and deeper breathing. So on the emWave Pro over here, in these figures, it showed that SE's heartbeat per minute further decelerated to an average of 68 beats per minute. And the peaks and valleys of each beat look more consistent after the 60 seconds. So that is the 60-second mark. And you can see from here, it looked more consistent. And overall, you can see her coherence scores, low coherent 8, middle coherent 10, and a high coherent of 82. So after that, in the HeartMath emWave Pro, that is also known as the garden game, and she practiced the garden game with the ABwE. She was doing the breathing with the earth, and she further achieved the coherence score of completely 100 at the high coherence, and 0 scores at the low and the middle coherence. And you can see in the power spectrum, the peak actually emerges at the 0.1 frequency. Again, it's a very great marker of the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So that was in the week 3. And when she came back for the final session in week 4, session 4, as a concluding session. So SE has achieved an overall coherence level of 5 as the high coherence, 13, I made a mistake, it's a 5 as the low coherence, 13 as the middle coherence, and 82 with the high coherence with ABwE. And after that, SE did a post-assessment without any earth or aromatherapeutic breathing. And again, we can compare this with the baseline. And what we found was she was able to reach the highest peak closer to the 0.1 again and attain an overall coherence levels of low coherence of 10, middle coherence of 19, and high coherence of 71. So SE, the participant, was encouraged to continue practicing ABwE in her everyday life because SE's breathing appeared to be lower at around 8 breaths per minute. So as a concluding remark, SE was encouraged to continue practicing ABwE in her everyday life. So as a conclusion of this case study, we can see that SE, the participant, was able to see directly how her stressful thoughts and emotion could adversely affect her body. And it was uplifting to see that SE was motivated to change from the visual she saw flaring up in the emWave Pro Plus in the first session as compared to the good results that she achieved in the final sessions. So in fact, the participant SE appreciated that ABwE was easy to practice. And by doing that, she was able to shift her physiology profoundly and generated more coherent heart rate variability. So this present case study demonstrated that ABwE can be used as an important stress reduction protocol and that heart rate variability biofeedback can further evaluate other protocols in future. And future research studies can continually use HRV stress measurements to evaluate the effectiveness of stress management, such as using ABwE with more experimental subjects. And finally, organizations can objectively identify the most effective intervention types and customize an employee assistance program to reduce workplace stress. So that's the end of my case study presentation. So let's see if you have any questions for me.
Well, Adrian, that was very, very interesting. I was just going to ask you a question about workplace stress, and that's what you ended up on. So do you envision this being, this aromatherapy being involved in, people could have this in their office? And, I'm just speculating here. Instead of having, like during your lunch break, you can employ some aromatherapy. Absolutely. And then resume your computer activities, which we're all going to be under stress. I mean, and it's not bad stress. It's stress that, as you learn more, Adrian, more is asked of you, and you're capable of doing it. But this is just the way a lot of our lives are, and your talk, I think, is especially appropriate for now, post COVID pandemic, because many things have been virtual. Conferences, we could go to 2 conferences in the same week now because of this. Yes. This is all good. but it puts more things on our plate that we have to do. And it's another task we have to perform. So
Yeah.
my question to you is, could we have, like you listed, some examples, of different aromas at the beginning of your talk. Is there a more potent one? Is there one that would be selective, that would maybe have a greater impact on reducing heart rate, of those examples that you gave us? There were a few. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, first of all, we can also look at what the research has been presenting historically. And what we found was generally we can use aromas such as lavender and juniper, right? So these are the two that have been widely been preached in the literature. So these are the two. For certainty, we can use this to help with our overall well-being. But in my present case study, I've been also trying to experiment with other forms of aroma, so such as the earth, which I just introduced with you guys.
Right.
And I'm happy to share this paper with you guys after the session, and so they can get exact specific ingredients of how earth was devised. So I think moving forward, it's also about validating what works and what doesn't work, right? And using heart rate variability biofeedback, we can use this to endorse what are the aromas that is benefiting our body, right? And it's at the end of the day, we're talking about evidence-based research, right? So for now, I would endorse lavender, juniper, and earth. And for the rest of them, I'm not saying that they are not useful, but we need to further experiment them. And I think it's a good starting point, right? Because now everybody is looking at scientifically validated and reliable data. And with this device that we have over here, we can allow people to see for themselves what works and what doesn't. And they can see for themselves how their body is reacting visually, right? And it's not about some subjective questionnaires that we're filling, how do you feel at a rating 1 to 10, but now we're talking about scientifically validated and visuals, what they can see visually, and that is a game changer.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Looking forward to hearing more about this in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome. So in fact, my upcoming research is not just on aromatherapy, but we can use heart rate variability biofeedback to research on other modalities such as humor, like jokes, for example. So I'm actually doing a humor research right now, and I get participants to hear different kinds of jokes, and it's really interesting to see how different jokes affect their physiology. Their body react differently to different kinds of jokes. Dark jokes, lighthearted jokes.
Well, this is awesome. One thing that I'll tell you that is really out there that crossed my brain on the basic science front, and I know you're going to laugh when I mention this to you, but and this is the time, if you found a really potent one that dramatically reduced heart rate, the thought crossed my mind, hey, could we find something that could be used as an antiarrhythmic to replace amiodarone in the cath lab when we do our experiments preclinical? I know that's out there, but that would be another thing that I thought of.
Absolutely.
If it works that fast and that quickly,
There's always a better way, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I have started the ball rolling, and as Dr. Young said, I'm the moderator for tonight. So what I'm going to do is stop my share, and let's see if the next speaker is ready.